Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a bit of fascinating material here today. We're drawing from the CBRE Global Tech Talent Guidebook for 2025, plus some related articles.
Mm,
And we're really diving into this, well, truly global search for tech talent. It's not just happening in the usual spots anymore, is it?
Not at all. Silicon Valley isn't the only game in town. It hasn't been for a while.
Right. So our goal here is to pull out the key insights to help you understand this landscape. It's changing fast. We want to get a handle on why some places are doing so well and what's really shaping the future of where tech talent pools.
Absolutely. And this guide, it looks at over 100 markets globally. They use a helpful classification system too.
Hmm.
Powerhouse markets think the big global players. Then established markets strong regionally. And finally, emerging markets, the ones really picking up steam.
Okay, so like top tier, solid regional hubs and the ones to watch.
Got it.
And we'll be looking at, well, everything that plays into this map, right? The number of skilled people, the costs involved, huge trends like remote work, and of course the big one, AI, artificial intelligence.
Definitely. Okay, so let's maybe start with the big picture. The overall health, tech sector employment, VC funding. It's still pretty robust, globally speaking.
Even with the slowdown we heard about starting in 2023.
Yeah, there was a slowdown, kind of a cooling off after that post-pandemic hiring boom.
Right, the headlines about big tech companies cutting back, 2022, 2023.
They did cut back.
Yeah.
But it's important context. Most of those companies still have more employees now than they did before the pandemic hit.
Ah, okay. So more of a correction than a collapse.
Precisely. And those widespread layoffs, they seem to have really stabilized now. The data shows a pretty big drop, over 40% decline in layoffs in 2024 compared to 2023.
Okay, so the market corrected, stabilized, and is still growing. What's actually fueling that continued growth then?
Well, the really fascinating driver here is AI, artificial intelligence. It's just pouring fuel on the fire.
How so?
Get this. AI accounted for a record high $129 billion in venture capital funding worldwide in 2024.
$129 billion. Just for AI. Wow. That really tells you something about priorities.
It really does. It tells us investors see AI as, the key catalyst for the next big economic growth cycle. This isn't just about neat software features. It's potentially fundamental shifts in productivity.
Yeah.
And that drives value and, interestingly, demand for real estate, too.
And who's getting that funding?
The U.S. absolutely dominated the AI funding scene in 2024.
Okay, so the U.S. gets the lion's share of AI money. But is the fastest tech job growth necessarily happening there, or where the VC money is flowing most heavily?
Not always. Actually, the fastest tech job growth, looking at the period 2018 to 2023, was happening elsewhere. Latin America, Canada, and the Asia-Pacific region.
Really? Any examples jump out?
Yeah, like Monterrey in Mexico, it saw average annual growth of 25%.
25% annually. That's
Yeah.
huge. Puts things in perspective beyond just the major hubs.
It does. And you have to look at the broader labor market context, too.
How does that fit in?
Well, the global unemployment rate is holding around 5%, but that number hides massive differences between markets. And if you connect this to demographics, many developed countries are actually facing a shrinking working age population.
Right, I've read about that. That must impact hiring plans significantly.
Hugely. It makes finding talent at scale much harder. So places with a growing working age population, they become inherently more attractive.
Makes sense. Where are we seeing that growth?
Well, markets like Bengaluru, they saw about 2.4% growth between 2019 and 2024. Toronto was at 2.2%. And even some established markets known for growth, like Waterloo region or Austin, they're seeing even faster growth, like 3.8% in Waterloo's case. Strong population dynamics are a real asset.
Okay, so AI is driving massive investment, heavily focused on places like the Bay Area, London, New York, Beijing, Paris. Those accounted for, 60% of global AI BC in 24?
That's right.
But the fastest overall job growth is often happening elsewhere. So let's zoom in now. Where is all this tech talent actually located? Like the sheer numbers, the size of the pools?
Yeah, this is fundamental for any company planning its global footprint. Scale matters. The 2023 data shows 8 markets with over 500,000 tech workers each.
500,000. Okay. Where are they?
This is what's fascinating. All 8 were in Asia-Pacific.
All 8. In APAC, that's a massive concentration. Which one's topped 1,000,000?
Beijing, Bengaluru, and Shanghai. Each over 1 million tech talent workers.
Incredible scale there. So who's in that next big tier, say, outside India and China?
Tokyo also breaks the 500,000 mark. Then you've got a group between 300,000 and 500,000 that includes London, New York, Paris, the San Francisco Bay Area, and Toronto.
Okay. What about Latin America?
Only Mexico City and Sao Paulo had over 200,000. Smaller pools overall, but growing fast in places.
Got it. So size is one thing, but what about quality? I know the report looks at
It
education.
does. You have countries with really high rates of educational attainment. Think Ireland, Switzerland, Singapore. Very skilled populations per capita.
Hmm.
But in terms of the sheer number of educated people, the biggest pools are in India, China, and the U.S. And it's probably no surprise that the U.S. and China also boast the most top-ranked universities pumping out that talent.
Okay, let's really zero in on the hottest skill set right now. AI development talent. Where are the biggest workforces specifically for that?
Looking countrywide, the U.S. leads with about 406,000 AI development folks. India is close behind at 375,000.
Okay. And third place?
The UK, but it's a distant third, around 72,000.
Interesting. Now, where's the demand for those AI skills highest relative to the people already there? That tells you where the hiring pressure is really on.
Right. So in absolute numbers, demand is highest in the U.S. and India. But if you measure it by job postings as a share of the existing workforce, basically, how fast are they trying to hire compared to who they have?
Hmm.
It's growing fastest in Poland.
Poland. Really?
Yeah, AI job postings there represent 10% of the existing AI professionals. That's significant growth pressure. After Poland, it's the U.S. at 8.1% and Germany at 7.7%.
That 10% in Poland really suggests rapid AI adoption and hiring catching up there. Okay, what about specific cities, metro markets for AI pros?
Bengaluru leads the pack numerically with 94,000 AI-related professionals. Then you have the San Francisco Bay Area with 71,000 and New York City at 43,000.
And the metros with the highest share of AI job postings versus their local AI workforce,
Look,
where companies are most urgently trying to hire.
that's where it gets interesting. Washington, D.C. leads by a wide margin, 17.0%.
17%? Wow.
Yeah, huge demand relative to supply there. You have Boston at 8.3%, Seattle at 8.1%, and the Bay Area again at 7.9%. Those are the spots where the competition for AI talent is really, really hot right now.
Okay, so beyond where the talent is and what skills they have, the practical reality for companies always comes down to cost, right? That's going to be a huge piece of this.
Oh, absolutely critical.
Well,
Often the deciding factor once you know the talent exists. The sources are very clear. For most tech companies, especially non-manufacturing, labor is the biggest expense, by far, followed by real estate.
and the cost differences globally must be enormous.
Just massive, stark differences. If you take, say, software engineer salaries as a benchmark,
Hmm.
the highest are pretty predictably in the San Francisco Bay Area
Yeah.
and New York.
And the lowest.
You find some of the lowest in places like Manila, Buenos Aires. Huge range.
And I assume real estate office costs show a similar spread.
They certainly do. Office rents are highest in cities like Paris, London, Zurich, Singapore. So yeah, when companies are picking locations, they're constantly doing this balancing act. Talent availability, the specific skills they need, versus these really significant cost differences in both people and places.
Right. And speaking of location decisions, the report really emphasizes something that feels like a major ongoing shift. The rise of these emerging markets. The guidebook flags, 40 potential ones, beyond the usual suspects.
Yeah, this is where the global map is really getting interesting, getting redrawn. And the why behind it is key. It's not just random. It's a mix of things coming together.
Like-
Things like advancing education and tech skills happening locally, more business-friendly environments being fostered, definitely the lower operating costs compared to the giants, and often an attractive quality of life that pulls people in.
And I bet the whole shift towards remote and hybrid work has poured gasoline on that fire.
Oh, absolutely, a huge catalyst.
Yeah.
Suddenly, remote work made lots of smaller markets, places that maybe weren't seen as established tech clusters, before totally viable options for companies building global teams.
So you can tap into talent and get cost benefits without needing everyone in one expensive central office.
Exactly. It kind of democratized access to talent pools way beyond the traditional hubs.
So what are the ingredients? What actually helps these emerging markets gain momentum and become self-sustaining tech centers? The report seemed to point to a few key factors.
Yeah, there's definitely a recipe. One big one is fostering a real culture of startups and incubators. You see that highlighted in places like Turin, Italy, or Lille in France. They mentioned the Eurotechnologies incubator there. Kuala Lumpur, too. Hangzhou in China is specifically noted for a cluster of AI startups.
Government help seems crucial to incentives, policies.
Definitely plays a role. Porto in Portugal, for instance, benefited from targeted marketing campaigns. Casablanca has developed specific tech districts and parks. Dubai's been really active, changing regulations to pull in VC money and talent, like their Golden Visa program.
Right.
And you see Bangkok and Jakarta making strategic investments, pushing tech-friendly policies.
And some places seem to leverage what they already have, their existing local economies.
That's a smart play. Integrate tech with existing strengths. Toulouse in France builds on its aerospace history. Edmonton in Canada leverages its energy sector. Leipzig in Germany, automotive. And things like digital trade growth have boosted e-commerce across borders, helping tech in places like Vietnam and Thailand.
Quality of life comes up too, right? Attracting mobile talent, digital nomads.
It really does. Places like Ho Chi Minh City, Belgrade, Katowice in Poland, they're mentioned as benefiting from having vibrant but also affordable lifestyles. That definitely appeals to a more mobile global workforce.
And underpinning it all, you still need the education and skills pipeline.
Absolutely foundational. Universities in places like Belo Horizonte in Brazil, Accra in Ghana, Cairo, they're becoming increasingly important sources of talent. The report even calls out specific universities like Zhejiang University in Hangzhou and the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur as being top 100 globally, feeding directly into their local tech scenes.
It's amazing how many specific examples the report gives across all regions. It really shows how widespread this is.
It's truly global. Like in North America, you've got Colorado Springs leveraging aerospace, defense, cyber, Des Moines strong in ag tech, fintech plus data centers, Edmonton pushing AI innovation at a lower cost. Even Las Vegas is noted for AI cyber gaming. And Stanford, CT, benefits from being close to New York, focusing on finance and cyber.
Then in Europe.
You see Belgrade attracting people with skilled professionals and lower costs. Katowice in Poland is strong in IT, logistics. Lille is building its digital economy hub, and Porto is drawing foreign investment with skills, multilingual talent, high quality of life, and a good startup scene.
Asia Pacific.
Examples like Ahmedabad in India software, IT, fintech, especially around their Gift City initiative. Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, semiconductors, startups, young population. Jakarta, huge population, government training programs. Kuala Lumpur, semiconductor design focus, data centers.
And Latin America?
Belo Horizonte in Brazil has its universities, and the San Pedro Valley tech area. Lima, Peru, growing talent pool, low cost, more English speakers. Medellin in Colombia has seen growth thanks to a pro-business government. And Montevideo in Uruguay has strong education and high English proficiency.
Okay, last region, Middle East and Africa.
Dubai stands out, lots of government support, great infrastructure, attracting data centers. Accra in Ghana is seen as a regional gateway with digital infrastructure investment. Cairo is positioned as Africa's largest hub, big talent pool, low costs. And Johannesburg is an economic powerhouse with diverse talent and good access to VC. It's just a really diverse set of drivers pushing these places forward.
It really is. And all this emergence means companies can't just stick to the old playbook, right? Just picking one or two big hubs isn't enough anymore.
Exactly. They need more sophisticated strategies. The sources talk about companies actively moving towards more diversified talent and location strategies.
Why? Just to spread the risk.
That's a big part of it. Addressing geographical concentration risk. Relying too heavily on one spot makes you vulnerable to political shifts, economic downturns, even things like natural disasters. Diversification builds resilience.
So how do companies actually approach that diversification?
Well, the report suggests a kind of three-pronged approach. First, developing a comprehensive risk basket, basically, assessing all the risks for each location you use or consider. Second, using peer benchmarks, understanding how your location choices stack up against competitors. And third, future-proofing, thinking strategically about the size, location, and function of your workforce down the line.
Okay. And AI, it comes back into the picture here again, doesn't it?
Mm.
But in a different way impacting how work gets done and maybe where it makes sense to do it.
Precisely. The sources really challenge that traditional idea of automatically offshoring or nearshoring routine IT tasks just to chase the lowest labor cost.
Why is AI changing that calculation?
Because AI is getting really good at automating those routine, often repetitive tasks, the very tasks that were prime candidates for offshoring, based purely on cost savings.
Okay, so automation takes over some of the work.
Right. But AI also significantly augments existing roles. It makes data analysis faster, decision-making sharper, and maybe most importantly, it creates entirely new high-demand roles.
Like the deep learning specialists, natural language processing engineers, algorithm designers we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And these new roles, they're often much higher value. They're not just about cutting costs. They're frequently core to generating revenue, driving product innovation.
So where do those kinds of high-value, revenue-focused jobs tend to end up?
Well, more often than not, they tend to stay located in the higher-cost headquarters or major regional offices.
Why there?
because that's often where you find the deep sector-specific experience, the institutional knowledge, the kind of collaborative environment you need for really complex, high-value work.
Interesting. And this leads to that fascinating idea of reshoring, bringing work back.
Potentially, yes. It's a really interesting implication. The sources point out that the productivity boost from AI can be so significant.
Hmm.
Think about it. One experienced developer in, say, San Francisco or London, powerfully augmented by AI tools, might actually be able to do the work that previously required a whole team of developers in a lower-cost location, doing more routine stuff.
So you could potentially bring those higher value functions back to HQ, use AI to make them super efficient, and maybe get the same output without a huge jump in labor cost, or maybe even save money overall.
That's the idea. It fundamentally changes the math. Offshoring purely for cost arbitrage on routine tasks. It's not such an automatic decision anymore. AI shifts the focus towards the value and productivity of augmented talent wherever they are. And that makes reshoring certain functions a much more viable strategic option than it used to be.
That's a pretty profound potential shift in global strategy.
Mhm.
Okay, let's briefly touch on a couple of other underlying factors the report mentions. First, there was a neat example about niche talent using the gaming industry.
Yeah, it's a good specific illustration. The gaming industry is just enormous. What, $188 billion in revenue last year? Huge. And it needs very specific talent, software engineers, obviously, but also content creators, artists, designers.
And AI's hitting that too.
Big time. The prediction mentioned is that generative AI could end up producing maybe 50% of all gaming content within a decade. That would totally reshape workflows and the kinds of skills needed.
And gaming is truly global itself.
Absolutely. APAC is the biggest market overall. North America and Europe are strong for those big-budget AAA games. And Latin America, the Middle East, North Africa, they're all emerging rapidly in the gaming space, too.
So it's a good example of specialized talent needs and how tech reshapes even niche industries globally.
Exactly. And the other key underlying factor discussed is market transparency.
Transparency. How does that relate to tech talent and location?
Well, it's basically about how predictable, trustworthy, and open to markets institutions are economic, social, political. The sources argue that the really stable, self-sustaining tech hubs are built on these foundations of transparency.
So companies and talent need confidence in the system.
Precisely. Confidence in the rules of the game.
Yeah.
The report breaks it down into roughly 3 areas.
Yeah.
First is general regulatory performance, things like how easy is it to actually do business? Are legal rights protected? Is tax compliance straightforward? Second, political and legal stability. Are there basic political rights, civil liberties? Is the environment stable and fair?
Makes sense. And the third?
Public and private data and information transparency. Basically, can you get reliable data and information? This impacts market efficiency, price discovery, everything.
So clear rules, stability, reliable information.
That's the core of it. Established markets generally score higher on transparency, which lowers the risk for businesses and investors. But crucially, the sources note that many emerging markets are actively working on reforms to improve these areas, precisely to make themselves more attractive for talent and capital.
Okay, so pulling this all together, wrapping up this deep dive, what we've really seen from all this source material is a tech talent landscape that's just incredibly dynamic and truly global.
Yeah, it's shaped by this really complex mix of factors, everything from, the big money flows of VC funding and the huge impact of AI, down to the nitty-gritty of labor costs, office rents, quality of life, and even how supportive local governments are.
And those established hubs, they're still vital, right?
Mhm.
Especially for driving AI innovation, housing those really high-value specialized roles.
Absolutely critical. But you can't ignore the impact of remote work acting as this catalyst, combined with all these deliberate efforts happening in emerging markets, better education, startup ecosystems, government policies. It's undeniably driving the rise of exciting new tech centers all over the map.
Understanding these shifts seems, well, essential. Whether you're a company trying to figure out your talent strategy, planning where to locate people, or even just trying to navigate your own career in the tech economy, this kind of insight is crucial.
It really is. It helps you make much more informed decisions in a landscape that's just not standing still.
It definitely isn't. And, it leaves you with a really provocative thought to chew on. If AI is making individual developers way more productive, potentially flipping the script on offshoring economics, and at the same time, remote work is making dispersed global teams totally viable, fueling these emerging markets, How could the entire global distribution of tech talent fundamentally change over, say, the next 5 or 10 years? What places that aren't even really on the established map today might just become the next major tech hubs we're all talking about?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something to definitely keep watching as this continues to unfold.